This episode of What the Tech is brought to you by Harry's. For guys like you who want a great shave experience at a fraction of what you're paying. Go to harrys.com and get $5 off your first purchase by entering the code WhatTheTech when you check out.
What the Tech?
Hey everybody, welcome to What the Tech. I'm Andrew Zare, and of course I'm joined by Mr. Paul Thurrott. How you doing, Paul?
Pretty good.
Wonderful. We're back. We're back to Tuesdays. I think now your schedule has settled. We've decided that the new time for the show...
Nothing will ever change.
Nothing will ever change again. You're never going away anywhere else. We've decided that the new time for the show is 2 p.m. on Tuesdays. We do not do the show on Tuesday. We'll be on a Thursday. Those are the 2 days that we will do a show. Most likely it'll be on a Tuesday, but we're doing the show at 2 p.m. now instead of 3 p.m. I like the earlier starts. I feel like the day hasn't defeated me. By 4 o'clock, I've been defeated by the travesties that happen throughout the day. I mean, I know for you, there's a certain point where it's just everything hits at the same time.
Yeah, it's about 9 o'clock in the morning.
Guys, we have so much to talk about today. A couple cool topics, actually. Paul and I were talking about a couple things here. You have a Windows-based Roku-type device you wrote an article on Thurrott.com, and I'm very curious about it because I saw that it's one of those hybrid Android and Windows boxes.
Yeah, it just happens to be.
I want to talk about it because I'm interested by those devices. And a lot more. We have so much more to talk about. But before we do, let's talk about our sponsor, and that's Harry's. Paul, last week you brought up that they have a new handle for these blades. New blade, and there's a new handle also. They put rubber on one of them.
Yeah, I saw that.
So this is actually cool. They've improved the flexibility on the hinge of these razors and delivers more of a comfortable glide. I am getting mine probably tomorrow. Most likely it'll come after I do this library, but I'm really excited to start using it because it's exactly for me. You know, when I shave, and by the way, I've been using a Harry's razor forever now, and it's because of the quality of the blades. I was one of these guys that used the cheapo, disposable 12-pack razor, but the ones that I used came with like a really thin blade, and it was more for like facial hair and sideburns. And I've been using a Harry's blade for a while to kind of work around it, but now with this new blade, with this attachment, they've added the trimmer blade, so this thing is going to be perfect for me. I was blown away when you introduced this to me last week on the show.
Like I said, I was in Paris when I got the email from them, and I was like, oh, I got to get this. I should have ordered it before I came home. I just forgot.
Yeah, I think this is really cool. I think this is great for any guy that has, sideburns, or they have any kind of facial hair, and they're trying to kind of, work around. I think it's a great product for you.
I need like a weed whacker.
You need a weed whacker,
facial hair is like something I wish I could remove permanently.
Yeah. Guys, you should go check it out. Go to harrys.com right now and check out all their new products, their new line. Gen 2 is very different than Gen 1. They've revamped the whole look and feel of everything here. Very, very cool products, which I'm getting in a couple of days. Go to harrys.com and use the coupon code WhatTheTech at checkout. That's harrys.com and use the code WhatTheTech and get $5 off your first order. I think this is a great product. I've been using it for a while. Paul's been using it. And this is great for anybody. For your dad, for your brother, for anybody that wants this razor. You're looking for a gift for somebody, you're looking for yourself. Great, great product. harrys.com and use the code WhatTheTech at checkout. Get $5 off. I want to thank Harry's for supporting the show and, of course, supporting the GFQ network. So, Paul.
Yes.
I want to start out by talking about this device because I was very interested by what you posted on your website. What do you call it? The Woku? Is that what it is?
Well, like a Windows Roku.
Yeah.
For years now, I've been lamenting the fact that Microsoft doesn't offer a cheap way to get access to its media services in the living room, right? And there's all these like workarounds. What I really want to see is them fully support all of the available living room solutions, the Amazon Fire TV, the Roku, the Apple TV, whatever. They already make mobile apps for Groove, not for movies and TV, but for Groove.
Yeah.
Put these things everywhere. It kind of makes no sense to me that such a thing doesn't exist. And so right now, the only elegant way to access both of those services in the living room is an Xbox, but Xbox consoles are expensive. And of course, you need a media remote to use it effectively. You could use like a Miracast dongle with a phone or a tablet or a PC, but that's not super elegant. You could connect an HDMI cable to your computer, I guess. That's obviously not super elegant. And I don't know what kind of made me think of this last week. I can't remember what it was, but it suddenly occurred to me, we have all these cheap computers that come in small form factors. I didn't use this one yet. In fact, I probably would have used the Kangaroo PC, which I'm a big fan of. You can get one for about $100, $120, I think. And there are stick computers, like the Intel Compute Stick is like this. There are various very small form factor PCs, smaller than like an Intel NUC. I mean, I'm talking like really small, really cheap, low end hardware, like Atom-based,
like a Raspberry Pi
processor.
type thing.
Raspberry Pi type thing, yeah. Except Intel.
Yeah, Intel based. Yeah. So were you initially, because I'm looking on your website right now, were you initially playing around with the idea of doing a Raspberry Pi setup?
Yeah,
and running
I bought all
on
that stuff. I bought a Raspberry Pi 3. I bought a case, a power supply. I already have an SD card, and as people who have used this product already know, the Raspberry Pi 3 is very much an IoT device. It doesn't have a desktop. It doesn't have the store or the front end stuff that's needed. So I kind of looked into it still. I mean, this thing you can do. You can run apps remotely on it from your PC, and I suppose there's probably some underhanded ways of getting, I don't know, the Microsoft apps over there.
I have I have a friend that makes like I have a friend of a friend of a friend, someone that I know, and he makes these into little NES boxes. Yeah. And he loads up all these Nintendo games, and he sells these Raspberry Pis with the Nintendo case. I mean, it looks awesome. It's really cute looking, this tiny thing, but it's flexible. Yeah. You could do a lot, but again, this is something that you got to work at and you got to kind of put together.
Right. And there are actually Intel versions of the Raspberry Pi available, not from Raspberry Pi, but from other companies. And that I have not got. I did not get one of these yet. Somebody pointed one out to me on Twitter, I guess, last week. But it looks just like Raspberry Pi. It's a small form factor PC board with all the parts in place. You're typically going to see very standardized components on these things, right? Whether it's a stick PC like the Compute Stick, a Kangaroo, or whatever it is. You're going to see it's going to be an Atom processor. It's probably going to be 2 gigs of RAM. It's probably going to be 32 gigs of eMMC storage. You can pay a little bit more in some cases and get a 4 gigs of RAM with 64 gigabytes of storage. And I think it was somebody in the comments to the original article pointed me to a device that looks just like a Roku or an Apple TV, and inside it is just what I just described, like a really low-end Raspberry Pi style Intel-based PC. It actually comes with Windows 10 Home, which is really nice because otherwise you'd have to pay for it, which is $100. And the whole box itself, I think, was $100 or maybe $110, somewhere in that thing. And actually, it works pretty well. I sort of position this as like a DIY project kind of thing when I first wrote about it. The article you're referencing, and honestly, slapping a Raspberry Pi into a case and adding an SD card and doing that kind of stuff is probably about as minimal as a DIY project can get. But maybe I guess knowing how it was going to turn out, I might have just done it as more of a straightforward kind of how-to kind of thing. But whatever. It's interesting. The trick, of course, is that
this is it, right? That I have on the screen right now. Okay,
so it looks like you can look at it. It's an Apple TV, looking kind of thing, or Roku looking.
What is it called? What is this one called?
Yeah, it's it's Mars. I don't know the name off the top of my head, but they actually call it a Wintel mini PC. It's a Chinese company. So the two big parts that I bought that kind of comprised this thing were an air mouse type remote control, which actually works surprisingly well, by the way, because a lot of people who put PCs in living rooms do things like, well, have a Bluetooth media keyboard of some kind with a big trackpad on it, maybe. And I wanted something that my kids could pick up the remote and use it like like a Roku. Obviously, that was the point.
So it's about $100.
It's about $100, yeah. Spend $15 on a remote control, and it works okay. There's little issues with it. I am going to write a follow-up just about the experience. I mean, the media apps work fine. The performance is fine. It doesn't get super hot. It doesn't make any sound. It's fanless, obviously. Most of the buttons on the remote work just fine. There's no way to program them or customize them in any way. It's a Chinese company. There's no support at all. The one thing it doesn't do is turn the device on.
Did you get the Pro model or you got the other one? Because I see that they have a couple of them. They have the Wintel W8 and the Wintel Pro Mini.
I think I just got the cheapest one.
The $88, whichever one.
Oh, yeah. No. It was,
one is 94, one is 88. I have a link in the chat room. I'm going to put a link for everybody if they're interested in it, because this is fascinating to me. This little box.
It's interesting. I do want to say I'm not necessarily recommending this exact thing as the solution. I will say there are others that are like this, and if you want to, your own case, and you can do like I said, there's Raspberry Pi type things. The Kangaroo PC is an interesting option as well. I just picked this one because somebody recommended it, and looking at it, it is spiritually what I'm talking about. It looks like a Roku, right?
It looks like a Roku Apple TV. Yeah.
That's what attracted it to me.
Interesting. So you got this thing, you set it up. What was that experience like? And by the way, guys, if you want to follow along with this, go to thurrott.com. The post is on there right now. It's called BYOPC. Use the mini PC as a Woku. It's when I saw this is interesting. So this box actually, it's dual boot. You could dual boot on this, right? You could do.
Yeah, and I haven't looked at the Android part of it, but yeah, you can dual boot to Android. If you
want. What was the Windows experience like altogether?
It's fine. The one thing that's common to all these low-end kind of PCs, whether it's an HP Stream laptop or one of these little things, is if you need to install a major Windows update, like 1511 or the 1607 that just came out, it's going to take a while, and it's just that kind of thing just is slow on these devices. In use, the performance is fine, and it took me a little while to get up and running. It's funny because it came with Windows 10 Home, which is great. It came with 10.240, which is the version that came out last July. So this thing was woefully out of date.
Yeah.
And it spent some hours, downloading updates. It never actually got 1607, and so someday in the next week or so, it probably will get that update as well. But it has adequate expansion. There's a USB 2, right? It's not USB 3. There's probably, again, some higher end computers might have better expandability. It's got micro SD, HDMI out, which is pretty much what you're looking for. Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, Ethernet, if you want it.
But how functional is it? Like, to use it as, even just as a computer, how functional is it?
So, I mean, I didn't really use it like a computer, but it's a computer. I mean, how functional is an HP Stream a laptop? With 2 gigs of RAM and an Atom processor. It's exactly the same thing.
Because I'm going to put out a review of that that Chinese iPad style, Intel-based Windows Android device. I'm going to put out a review tomorrow of it, and I was actually very surprised how functional it is, knowing that it's running the Atom X5 chipset, which is it's a lower end. Intel
you're not
chip.
going to run Visual Studio on this thing.
No,
you're not going to play games. It's not that kind of a box.
Well, what kind of games can you play? I'm sure.
Right. I'm sorry. You can play obviously small games, but you're not going to run AAA modern shooters and stuff like that. It's it's a low end computer, but I don't think Microsoft or Windows or whatever gets enough credit. I mean, Windows 10 runs pretty good on fairly low end hardware.
Yeah, I'm very intrigued to see how this would work. So would this work in reality with what you're trying to do? Could you replace a Roku with this?
Well, replace a Roku is no. I mean, so yes, in a way, right? So Hulu is on a PC. You could run iTunes. It would run poorly, but you could do it. You could access Google Play from the web, which would work okay. It's not great, but you could do it. The point was that stuff would all work. So at least it's there. I think if I really did have a need to run iTunes, I would probably want a box with 4 gigs of RAM for starters, just because that application is a disaster. And there's no way, there's no way on the PC platform to stream content that you've already purchased without downloading it as well. So while you could stream something you purchased, it would be downloading in the background. And that would eat up your disk space pretty quick. You'd have to manage it manually. It's not the same kind of high. Well, you have to download it to a device too. It doesn't really matter. But it's just not an elegant solution. But at least it would work, right? So what you can make is the argument that a PC is the one box where you can access every service that you might want to access, right? And so from sort of a Microsoft ecosystem perspective, there are native apps for Groove and movies and TV, which was kind of the point. Like I really want access to those services elsewhere. But you get access to all the primary services you would expect, Netflix and Hulu and so on. Music services, obviously, all available in Windows, Spotify, Pandora, whatever. And, not on a 2 gig system, it's not elegant, but I guess it would work. I haven't actually tried it, but iTunes would work. Like I said, Google Play would work from the web. It would work, and it's not exactly the same. It's you're using the controller like an air mouse, meaning that you click a button to activate it and then you move the cursor around.
Move the cursor around, yeah.
As you move your hand. That sounds crappy. Honestly, it's not terrible. I mean, I think for a child or people who are not necessarily technically advanced, using a PC is kind of overkill for some of these services. But for people who are who know what they're doing and maybe want a little bit more, and it's not super expensive. I mean, you don't have to spend a lot of money.
Yeah, like I'm more concerned with playback, right? Ichu in HM said that we have yet to address the elephant in the room. How about if you run Media Center on this thing? Downgrade to 7, install Media Center on it.
No.
Here's the thing.
Not on this thing, for starters.
It has 2 gigs of RAM. Is this powerful enough to play 1080p playback through whatever application you're using?
Somebody in the comments to this article pointed out a higher-end device that's not super expensive, maybe $200, that could do 4K video.
Oh, wow. Let me see. Where
I don't have any specific recommendations for over-the-air or any kind of DVR capabilities. I guess the one thing I just point out, because it just happened today, is that HP Home Run came out with an Xbox One app today. It's not a recorder. It's just the client, right? So you still need somewhere in your home network some kind of real PC connected to a TV tuner with this software, and then you can use that as kind of a server to put it out to different devices, right? I'm sure it works with mobile devices like iPhones and iPads and so forth. But you could use an Xbox One now to get it out to the living room. You could use a device like this to get it out to the living room as well, and that would be maybe one way to do that kind of thing. But that's a topic I'm not super comfortable with, because I just don't. I don't want to say I don't care. I don't mean it like that exactly, but the ability to access DVR recorded TV shows from anywhere in the world is not a super concern for me. We just watch TV.
Yeah, for some people it is. For me, it's
absolutely.
I'm
not.
Yeah. From what I'm able to access online through services that I pay for, I'm more than happy to watch on-demand content that way. DVR has taken kind of a back seat for me as far as watching television. I don't really DVR anything at this point because everything is available on demand.
Here's one for you. For unrelated topic, sort of it's not a non sequitur, but kind of a slide sideways. Last night, my wife and I were talking about how it's kind of weird. We haven't really watched the Olympics this year. We make a point every year of watching, no one can watch the Olympics. It's on all day long, but I mean,
I imagine you and Steph have old school monitors just set up in a line, and you just have every event on.
Every sport is on.
Synchronized swimming and.
Okay, but so I don't know if you've tried to do this, but given what I just said, if I said to you it's 8:00 at night on a weekday, and I said, hey, we've never watched the Olympics, we should catch up on the Olympics, where would you go to catch up on the Olympics?
That's a really good question. I have no idea right now where to watch. I know it's all over the place. NBC's put it on like MSNBC and all their sports.
Well, I mean, you're sitting in front of the TV. In other words, so
we'll find out what's on.
Well, I know it's on NBC, right?
Okay.
So the first thing I did was I go to NBC, see what's on live, right? And it was something really boring.
Table tennis.
I don't remember.
Not that there's
I thought,
anything wrong with it.
the Olympics is enough of a big deal that there probably are other channels that NBC runs that maybe they're putting other things on. And so I clicked around, and interestingly, I found a soccer channel and a basketball channel that must be like temporary channels on my cable. And both of them had games on at the time. Like Spain was playing Argentina. I don't know if it was live. I think it was last night, and some other whatever was on the soccer channel. I thought, oh, okay, so that's live TV. That's not very good. Online, like where would I go online? There must be like, how about YouTube? And so I went to Roku, and there must be an Olympics channel on Roku, and sure enough, I'm sorry, on YouTube, and sure enough, there is.
There is.
And we started looking at that, and aside, there were no. Despite the fact there were things that looked like this would be, that they would, despite the fact that these things would look like, geez, how do I even say this? What I thought I was looking at was recaps of the day. Like you could say, here's the stuff that happened today on the Olympics, or here's the stuff that happened in basketball today on the Olympics, or here's the stuff that happened in swimming, or whatever. It was all from like the previous Olympics.
Oh, interesting.
And it became obvious clicking around that there was no recent content other than some baloney promotional type things.
Yeah.
From the Olympics. I thought that's really weird, And we actually gave up on it for a while, and we were watching something live, some Olympics, whatever the Olympics thing was live. And then I thought, you know what? Wait a second. Maybe NBC has a YouTube channel for this, and they do. And actually, that was okay. The only problem with it was there were 417 videos. They're all 56 seconds long. Part of that time is always taken up with the same little intro and the same little, outro. And some of them are like unbelievably pointless. Watch gymnast smile while she stands waiting for her medal. That was the whole video.
So
some of them were interviews, like you don't get to see the event. Like it's like, here's Michael Phelps after a race. Here's Michael Phelps after another race. Wow, these guys are talking about this controversial thing that happened during a race. But you don't get to see the event.
Chris,
so we spent hours on this last night, and I have to say, overall, it was fairly.
I don't know where this app. I don't know what other platforms this is on, but the NBC Sports app on Xbox has everything.
Has everything. Okay.
I didn't know that, but I don't know what else they're on. Yeah, I think you're right. It's
weird how it wasn't
weird.
very good.
They've always had a problem with the Olympics. Do you remember the year they put it on pay-per-view?
No.
I don't know if we've ever discussed this. I was so fascinated by this when I was a kid. That they put this on pay-per-view, and it was like a super, super expensive package, and all the cable providers pitched in to put everything on pay-per-view. Like, you had, like, the main stuff, and then you had, like, all this other stuff happening on, like, 30 different pay-per-view channels. And I think the number was something like 2,000 people ordered it on pay-per-view. It was, like, a total failure on every possible front. It was just, and they hemorrhaged so much money from this.
I wonder if people just didn't know about it. Or...
No, everybody knew. They made sure everybody knew. Nobody wanted to pay $200, for the week to watch the Olympics. Right. It is interesting. I mean, it's one of those things. Are they? And they really have not been pushing any of this like 4K stuff or anything like that.
If they have, I haven't seen it. But again, we really haven't watched too much of the Olympics until just now. Yeah. So I don't know.
So. Guys, if you want to get more information about this mini PC, which I'm really fascinated by, go to Thurrott.com. You can check it out there. It's actually, I've been looking for something like this for years, that I wanted to build like my own Android box like that. But really, at this point, these set-top boxes are doing such a good job, and they're meeting my needs. I'm not really in the market for one like this, but I may actually buy this thing just to play around with it to see what I could do with it. Maybe put Kodi on it and call it a day.
Yeah, I mean, so right. Some people have been saying to me that you can do these other things. There's, like Kodi and things like that. And yes, the thing is, I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to do this very specifically from kind of a Microsoft standpoint. So there might be, you could put, even like the Raspberry Pi, you could put the Raspberry Pi version of Linux, whatever that's called, and you could probably remote desktop into a Windows PC, and you could do different things.
Yeah. So Paul, guys, by the way, before we move on, I want to mention that we do a bonus show each and every week following the podcast here. If you go to patreon.com/whatthetech, you can fund it. You can fund us. We got to pay for editors. We have to pay for the producers. All this, the hosting. It's crazy. So when you fund us, that's what you really help us out with that. Patreon.com/whatthetech. We do a bonus show each week. You could access it there, and you can fund us. I want to talk to you about the iPhone. Okay.
Okay.
And I want to touch on this. I don't want to spend too much time, which I always say
I
that.
think
Now
we should waste an hour on this.
Now we're going to waste an hour on this. So the event will most likely take place September 7th. And we know about certain things, obviously, with this thing. But I'm wondering, the whole removing the 3.5 millimeter plug for the headphone jack has become this huge deal.
Right.
I'm trying to figure out if this will be a make or break for the average consumer. And I'd love to get feedback about this because for me, it's annoying, right? Like, I would be annoyed. What do you mean I can't plug my headphone in here? But I don't know if that's enough to prevent me from purchasing an iPhone if I'm an iPhone user.
So what if it came with a little adapter that let you use your existing headphones?
I think it's going to have to come with something. I don't know necessarily about the adapter, but I do think, obviously they're going to give you a headphone with it, right? With that lightning port.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
They're probably going to, they give you the headphone anyway, so now they're going to give you the headphone with
no one else even does that anymore, but yeah, you're right. Apple still, I think, does. Yeah,
Samsung does it. Samsung does it.
Yeah. Do they?
Okay. Yeah. I think they all do it, actually. I'm trying to think, who doesn't give a head?
I don't know.
Does Windows Phone give you a headphone?
Dude, come on.
Earbuds? No.
I have no idea. Yeah. I don't even notice these things. I'm never going to use the headphones that come in a box with a phone.
So, I'm curious if people. I'm wondering for that moment when they're like, "What do you mean I can't plug this in? What do you mean I got to spend $20 on an adapter?"
Yeah, exactly.
Is that going to be a negative thing for Apple? Like, are they going to suffer by this? Like, I wonder when, local news picks it up. It's like, looking to get a new iPhone? Whoa, wait a minute. You can't use your headphones more at 11. And then it becomes this huge story that you can't use your headphones with this phone. I wonder, if that is going to impact people that are purchasing the next iPhone.
Yeah, I don't know.
Would it let me ask you, would that be a make or break for you?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I don't. So here's the thing. I'm not sure how to answer that because to me, this factors in as part of an overall decision. So, for example, if you believe that the iPhone 7, which should be called the iPhone 6 something else, right, is the third rendition of the iPhone 6 line of products, right, and is not a major new design, has probably an improved camera, which we've been getting lately on iPhone updates, improved antenna design, which may or may not make things work better. I don't really have any major issues with it today. And it requires a hokey adapter to use the headphones I already own.
And then what?
That might be enough combined to tell people to skip it.
Here's another thing. You know how many people actually, and this has been something that I didn't even consider, okay? I've gotten so many emails about this whenever I discuss this. You know how many people actually listen to music and they're plugged in?
Listen to music and they're plugged in.
And their phone is plugged in, charging.
Oh, right.
Now you're going to need a dongle for that.
A lot of people have Bluetooth headsets, right? So
I guess
you could
so.
make the argument that a good pair of Bluetooth headphones would obviate the need for a headphone jack anyway.
Yeah. I don't know if people are going to care about this as much as I think they
some
should.
People will. Some people.
Listen, for me, I would be annoyed.
No, it's definitely an annoyance. For example, 3 something years ago, I bought, or actually I received for Christmas, I guess, a pair of headphones that I love and use every day, still to this day, the Bose in-ear noise-canceling headphones, whatever the model is. If you look them up online, what you're going to find out is that there's two versions of it. There's one designed for Apple devices, and there's one designed for everything else.
That's
Obviously, I bought the one designed for everything else, right? But the thing is, I use it with an iPhone all the time. It works fine, meaning that the little buttons on there will pause playback, will lower the volume, and so forth. The microphone on the cable, from the headphones, works. So I'm not 100% even sure what the point of having different versions is, but I'm pretty sure now we're going to see a version of these that will be for this new thing down the road. And I really don't like, that's the one thing about the Apple ecosystem and the lock-in stuff that you get that I really don't like.
Yeah.
It's very restrictive.
You know what I was
And-
thinking? You're absolutely
And expensive.
It's
you know?
expensive. It's restrictive, but I think this would have. I don't know what kind of blow they're anticipating from this headphone issue, with getting rid of the headphone jack. But I think it would have softened the blow if, with the previous version of the iPhone, when they provide you with that free iPhone headphone with the earpieces, when they provide you with that, they should have already been doing the Lightning port instead of doing the 3.5 millimeters. So now people are accustomed to the fact that, oh, this is what I got from this. Oh, this is where it goes.
Right.
It's.
So
I'm curious about that.
I'm curious to see what this stuff looks like, right? The whole notion of Apple removing a headphone jack to make it a thinner device doesn't ring true when you look at how that port impacts the thickness of the device.
Yeah.
Like, I don't quite understand where that comes from.
I think it's a way to close you into their proprietary, headphones. This is just going to be
Right,
another way for
I think that's
you.
a much greater concern, and I'm sure, for example, the spy shots we've seen of this phone, they've replaced, they've put speakers on both sides of the Lightning port. Whoop-de-doo.
Yeah.
Right.
But who's
now the
listening to-
sound that only comes out from one side of the device will be a little better.
Yeah.
They need, if they're gonna, it would be more meaningful to me for that device to have stereo speakers, right, on either side of it, like a lot of other phones do.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I think, look, I have to get one of these because I read about technology and, I'm very interested in the camera quality, obviously, that kind of stuff. But from a day-to-day usage perspective, I had such a positive experience with the Nexus phone I used while I was away a couple weeks ago. And I'm looking forward to whatever the Nexus devices are coming out too. And I can assure you, those things will have a headphone jack. And, it's not the reason not to get an iPhone, but if you're an iPhone user, it may be a reason to say, well, I'm going to skip this generation and wait for the Big Bang release that's coming next year. It may be an opportunity to say, I'm getting a little tired of this constant tick-tock of proprietary nonsense that isn't done to advance a platform. It's really just done to lock me into this ecosystem.
I think we're going to see, if this becomes a trend, that's what I'm curious. Like, will we see Samsung say, "Oh, screw this. We're going to put USB, we're going to put USB-C ports, and we're going to get rid of the headphone jack, and this is what you're going to use for headphones now. So now you're going to have another standard for headphones." Or is everybody going to walk around with some sort of weird adapter, that you're putting on? I've heard the argument that digital audio is better, and they could do some compression, they could do some audio tweaking. No, listen.
Then you can support both.
Yeah.
You
can do that within software. In software, you can do it.
So, by the way, one of the things that sold me on the Bose headset that I just mentioned was that in the early days of noise canceling headphones, a lot of them required power for the headsets to work at all. And so these things, they're battery powered, they recharge over micro USB or whatever, it's fine. But one of the things I kind of like about it is if you leave the power on by mistake or something, you can still use them as headphones without noise canceling, right? Like they still work. And so on the flip side, if you were to go with like a Bluetooth model where you could say, look, I have less wires, I'm not plugging anything in now, it's really nice. Well, it's wireless. I could picture, we know of stories where people have said you can't use a Bluetooth mouse on a plane. I could picture being on a plane with a pair of Bluetooth headset and having someone saying you can't wear that. More to the point, I could picture being stuck with Bluetooth headsets that they've run out of battery. And now what are you going to do? Yeah. This is the one, like I said, the one nice thing about the Bose, and I'm sure there are other headsets like this, is that they work no matter what. And because it's a physical connection. There's no battery has to be involved. It's not wireless. It will work.
We're going to find out in a couple weeks.
Yeah, every time we doubt how pliable Apple's user base is, they exceed our estimation. So I have a feeling there'll be some grumbling, and they'll happily go.
It won't even matter because people go
running down that road.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's how it always happens. Since we're on the Apple topic, I wanted to bring up the Microsoft ads that we're seeing for Surface, and they're really going after this iPad Pro, huh?
Well, they should.
Okay.
When this ad came out, I think it must have been the day I was flying home from Paris. I remember being aware of it and not being able to write about it at the time, and I kind of locked away a little story I was going to write, and maybe I still will. I don't know. I kind of poured part of this into an article I wrote today. But I was going to write an article about, what's a computer? Where are we at? It's mid 2016. Does an iPad Pro qualify as a computer? And I, give Microsoft a little bit of credit in their ad, which is very short. They highlighted 2 or 3 little things which I think summarizes part of the problem. But the Steve Jobs car truck thing, PC's a truck. And a car can get the job done for most people, but sometimes you need to lug a load of rocks or pull a trailer or get through some mud or something, and you need a truck. And the iPad Pro is not a truck. It's just not. I mean, it is fair to say that for light productivity tasks, email and web browsing and things like that, a lot of people will be able to, get like what I would call work with air quotes around it, done with it. But I don't know. As I once observed to a coworker who told me he was able to get real work done on an iPad, you're not working hard enough if that's true. That's, that an iPad is a slightly bigger phone, that has a keyboard to it, so you can type, I guess, but I very rarely type in isolation. I'm often referring to something else. I like to cut and paste between documents and move things around. And this stuff is still kind of ponderous on the iPad Pro. And I've looked at it many times to try to judge whether this could somehow make sense.
Yeah.
Because there is an allure to the simplicity of the platform.
So for me, the way I was in that boat too, where I could not understand how people could. Like I have friends that do not have a computer. They don't even have a tablet. They just have a phone. And they get everything done on this thing. And they send their emails and they do their word processing and they do their photo editing. I think the definition has changed of what a computer should be. I think it's whatever works for your product, the way that for your productivity, I guess. If it's a productivity tool, then it's a computer. If it's
but you know what?
For you.
It still comes down to the central point that rankled Steve Jobs so much in the wake of the original iPad, where we started having this kind of conversation or a debate between what we now, and I hate these terms, but it's like content consumption versus content creation. And devices like tablets, even an iPad Pro with a keyboard attached to it, trend much more toward the content consumption and what I think of as light productivity than it does toward true productivity, which is actual content creation. Could you be a blogger and type words into an iPad Pro and post them to a website? Yes. But that's kind of the end of it. I mean, once you introduce something just as simple as, I need to have a hero image associated with every article that I post, that image has to be at a 16:9 ratio. It might have to be at a very specific resolution. I have to be able to go find that thing, download it, put it into an editor, crop it, cut it, edit it, throw it back up to the web.
And I'm sure you could do it, but it'll probably take you a lot longer.
I'm not actually sure you can. But assuming you can, it's going to be the most ponderous thing imaginable. And that's what, and this was in an article I wrote about today. It wasn't about the iPad Pro, but it's, yes, you should always be looking for ways to do things more efficiently. because sometimes we get caught up, and remember we talk about this a lot, traditions, and we get used to doing things a certain way. We should always be looking for a better way to do things. But sometimes you sacrifice too much to make a point. It's like these like Prius owners or tiny house buyers or minimalists or whatever. Like sometimes you can just, you're in making a point, you've made everything terrible.
Yeah.
And you can go too far. And I think the iPad Pro, I have, I don't want to say no doubt, but I only have minimal doubts that Apple will ever do what it is required to make this thing a true productivity workstation. But it needs some things. It needs things like actual pointer support for really fine control over where a cursor is in a document. It needs file system access, basic file open and save capabilities. It just does. These and I know why they don't have it. I know Apple wants to shield us from this complexity. I know they want to rise to a higher level of existence or whatever, but you just need this basic stuff.
But when you know what it is, I see the argument early on, but now since we're kind of merging, right? Computers are merging with these appliance devices like an iPad. An iPad was an appliance for the longest time. It wasn't a major. You couldn't replace your laptop with an iPad. Now the argument, those lines are getting kind of blurred. And if you're blurring those lines and you're selling the iPad Pro as a productivity tool, adding some sort of file management service to the product makes the most sense. I can't imagine just going through individual, applications to find what I need.
Well, by the way, just talking about these levels of sophistication, even a Chromebook has a way to access the file system built into it so that if you download a file, a picture,
you can find it.
And you need to find it, you can. It's there.
Yeah.
iPad doesn't do this.
It's
a very basic feature.
It knows better.
And, I can also be really kind of, it's funny, the way Apple is, like, the folding keyboard cover, whatever that awful thing is a disaster. It's as bad as the first cover they put up for the first iPad. It's as bad as the first type cover was for the first Surface. It's just really immature and terrible.
Yeah.
And they'll probably get it right. And someone will point out that you can use any Bluetooth keyboard, and fair enough. You can fix that problem that way. But the Pencil is wonderful for the 1% of people who need or use such a device. But for the rest of us, who don't draw or paint or doodle or, just do things that way, this device is not sophisticated enough to compete with a real computer, which is the point of that Microsoft ad. The Surface also has a wonderful pen with pressure sensitivity and great capabilities along the lines of drawing and writing, painting and whatever. But it also has a great glass trackpad, and it's a computer. It has a file system. It has actual, awesome, complex, and powerful desktop applications.
And see, I don't think
that's a computer.
I don't think the argument also here is it's a PC versus Mac. I think they're all PCs at this point, right? A Mac is a PC. A Chromebook, in my opinion, is a PC. You could do everything you're doing on. It's still the basics of having a PC. You can still do all the stuff you're doing. You have to use a different tool, but it's still in front of you. It's a computer. On the other hand, to kind of play devil's advocate, so we do live tweeting every Tuesday and Monday night for the Matt Men page that we have, and I find it unbearable to use Twitter on my phone and do it, while Rich will.
What is it you're doing on Twitter?
So we're live tweeting while we're watching the show, while we're watching wrestling, and then we're adding images and we're adding jokes and we're finding pictures. So for me, I want to do everything on my laptop. I have like this little
you need a laptop.
Rich goes, and I watched him do it, and he goes, Andrew, that's crazy. So what do you do? I'm like, well, like I'll take a picture of the screen if something happens. Like that's funny, and I like freeze. I take a picture with my phone. Then I wait for it to upload to Google Photo. Then I go into Google Photo, I save the image, I crop the image, and I put it on Twitter. He goes, watch how I do it. He took a picture, he cropped it on his phone, and he just posted it. I get it for that, right? Like it works for him. I don't want to work that way. I take one extra step, but I feel like it's a little bit more meticulous and a little bit more careful I could edit what I'm writing.
Sure.
You know, like I
Sure.
could actually look at what I'm writing rather than slamming on buttons and making an
Well,
error.
look, we all have different ways of doing things. I mean, we all have different things that we do. If you watch any kind of a sportscast or newscast or whatever, you'll often see the announcer will be there with some kind of a tablet, usually an iPad, but it could be anything. It doesn't matter. Obviously, they use Surface devices on the NFL, and why do they have that stuff there, right? It's really content consumption. Those guys are using it to refer to information. You can look up baseball stats or basketball stats or wrestling stats or whatever it might be. I don't think those guys are doing any kind of live interactive content creation as they go, like you're talking about. But I can I can post to Instagram and ideally you do that from a phone. It works from a phone. I can make short tweets, and most tweets are short, so no big deal. Text tweets or a tweet with text and a picture from a phone is easy.
Yeah.
For some things you need a keyboard, and you can make the argument that an iPad Pro, a Chromebook, or whatever kind of fits the bill. But depending on what you're doing, this is when we get into that truck conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to write applications or write software, you need a computer.
Yeah.
you just do. Will that change someday? Yeah, I don't know. I'm not the Oracle of Delphi here. I mean,
Not a futurist here.
Sorry. You can play video games on an iPad Pro, and I'm sure some of them are pretty beautiful. But if you want to play the latest AAA, shooter titles like we were talking about, you need a PC with a honking graphics card. The PCs they are more complicated, and they're overkill for some things, but they're also what you need for some things. And I think this dividing line, I just don't think the iPad Pro. It's like a little kid playing dress up. You can dress a little boy up in a suit and give him a briefcase, but it doesn't mean he's the CEO of a Fortune 500 company.
Yeah. That's
that's what it's like.
Point.
It's
No,
just like
I get it. I totally
make-believe.
get it. And I witnessed this when you brought it up today that you wanted to talk about this. I witnessed it happen last week with a beer rep. I was at press, and a beer rep came in. And I see this guy all the time on Mondays. If I'm there on a Monday, I see him. He comes in early afternoon. He sets up his laptop, and he's doing the order with them. And he comes in, and he had an iPad. And he's getting more and more frustrated. And I see this guy do this every time. I'm going to put my hand here. I don't know if you can see it, but he does this. And then he goes, and then
What's he
he
doing?
like, and I see him go like this. I'm like, and I look, I'm like, what are you doing? And he goes, I'm looking for my effing mouse. I hate this thing. And he had such a hard time on the iPad because it's like it's taking me 10 times longer to do anything. I got to touch the screen. I got to click on this. It's a whole new system they're making them use. I thought it was really interesting that they convert him over, but he's like, you know what? They're losing money because I'm spending about 30, 40 minutes more with every client now, just me fumbling around trying to figure out how to work this thing the way I want it to work. So for him, it doesn't work. For other people, who knows? Yeah, right, I edit all my photos on my phone now. Every photo that I take, I edit on my phone.
It's funny. Microsoft, can complain about this iPad Pro thing. I'm curious to see how or if Microsoft will ever respond to the Chromebook thing. Right when Chromebooks get Android apps, which is happening, right? There's this one platform that kind of does everything, and when you make the argument that the mass number of people can get by with less stuff, that the PC task type stuff, that finite range of things that you need a really powerful computer to do, not including programming and probably a few other things, are occasional tasks for a lot of people. You can start to make the argument that a Chromebook starts to make a lot of sense.
Yeah. I think
It's
the
not there
Chromebook makes
today,
a lot of
but-
sense. And it's going to make
you can
even
see
more
it.
sense in a couple of years, in a year or two, when almost every
6
Chromebook
months.
is
I mean,
running. 6 months, yeah. When all these
they have
Chromebooks are
Chromebooks
running.
that have touch. They have Chromebooks that have transforming form factors. They run Android apps now.
You can run Office on it.
Yeah, it's just I'm right now I'm looking at the iPad Pro thing because Apple's bragging about it or whatever. Please buy this very expensive thing that doesn't do a lot. Whereas the Chromebook value equation, you can make fun of Chromebooks all you want, but ultimately what we're talking about here is a device that doesn't cost much of anything and does a lot.
And you and
it's
I
the exact
have-
opposite of an iPad Pro.
And you and I both have kind of changed our tune with Chromebooks over the years, where they've gotten more
Well,
advanced and quicker and faster, and they've gotten better.
The way to say that is the Chromebook has improved.
Yeah.
Where it's not the joke that it used to be. I think people still have their, they're built-in biases on the one hand, but also just this notion of, well, you have to be online all the time to use it. And to which I say, A, no, you don't. So that opinion is out of date. And B, I'm online all the time I use my computer anyway. What's the difference? I mean, aside when I'm on a plane, and even then, at least 50% of the time I'm online.
Interesting. Fun stuff.
Yeah.
Really quick, Microsoft is changing the way that Windows 7 and 8.1 get updates, right?
Yeah, and it's funny. You got to kind of put this one in perspective because it's aimed primarily at businesses, right? And this is in many ways related to another recent step back that Microsoft took with the Skylake chipset support. Remember, they were originally only going to support Skylake for a very limited time on Windows 7 and 8.1, and then they were going to force you to upgrade to Windows 10. And with Windows 7 and 8.1, they haven't really. Microsoft stopped doing service packs. They want you to move to Windows 10, where everything just gets updated automatically. It works really well. But if you're still on Windows 7 and 8.1, especially if you have to clean install the operating system, you run into this problem where there's like hundreds and hundreds of updates. And you download manually. It's a pain in the ass. It takes forever. And I wrote about that, months ago. But it's a big problem. And so back in May or March or whenever it was, Microsoft put out a convenience roll-up for Windows 7 only, which basically took everything from Windows 7 Service Pack 1 onward and put it into one giant update. And so that, helps a little bit. Didn't do anything for Windows 8.1. And then they said they were going to put security updates into a monthly cumulative update, meaning that, 6 months or a year down the pike, when the time came, you could install the convenience update, and then you would get this cumulative update of security updates. And so, again, just the idea of just quicker updating. Not quite Windows 10 level, but, an improvement of some kind. So in the same way that they kind of step back from the Skylake thing, they kind of step back from this too. And I think it's tied to the fact that the Windows 10 upgrade process was not as successful as they expected it to be. And that they literally have several 100 million Windows 7 and 8.1 PCs out in the world that are really hard to service.
Yeah.
And they're positioning this as a customer thing, which, it ends up being ultimately, but in many ways, really, Microsoft is doing this to make things easier on themselves, which is fine because it helps everyone. And so the idea now is that Windows 7 feature and security updates, and to be clear, Windows 7 and 8.1 are not getting new features per se, not like we think of it with Windows 10, but there are updates that occur on those platforms. Will be rolled up into cumulative monthly updates, meaning that on either one of those platforms, you should be able to do a clean install of the operating system, let's say 6 months from now, and you won't have to spend an entire weekend, just bringing it up to speed so that you can then install apps and sync OneDrive and do all that kind of baloney.
You mentioned that.
Cross your fingers.
Obviously, it wasn't the Windows 10 update process wasn't as successful as Microsoft had hoped that it would be. What number were they envisioning by the end of this year?
Article, and so I will reveal to you exclusively.
Oh, here we go.
That at the time, I heard this now. This dates back a little bit. This is not from this month, so let's say probably last month, I guess, or maybe the month before. They expected to have almost double the uptick on Windows 10 in the first year that they got. So they were really Microsoft was expecting that 2 years after they made this announcement, they'd be able to say we did it, and it only took us half the time we said it was going to take. And they could see very clearly that it just wasn't generating the level of upgrading that they thought it was. It's funny because it was a huge success, right? I mean, 350 million, we're probably over 400 million now.
So they were
actual
looking
human
at
beings have
800 million
upgraded
right
computers.
Now? They were looking
What's
at
that?
800 million.
Yeah, by spring 2017, they expected to be at a billion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that is
almost entirely from PCs, contrary to all the baloney about phone. Phone was never going to be a big part of it.
Well, it was going to be PCs, and it was going to be these like Roku type devices. Not Roku.
Well, it's
I'm
all
sorry,
those things, but it's PCs, right? Yeah. The theory here is there are 1.5 billion PCs out in the world. We will update half of those in the first year. We'll still keep selling computers. That's 200 and something million a year. New Windows 10 installs, right? It's probably 275 complete run, but let's say 200 million going right to Windows 10. So this 400 million right there, that's $1 billion, easy, 1 year. Well, 1.5 years, I think it was. They were positive they were going to get to it.
I have a question for you. Do you think Intel's abandonment of their mobile chipset, not necessarily only for phones, remember this mobile chipset works on tablets and things like that, these smaller devices, do you think that is part of this major impact as why the numbers are lower than they envisioned? Because I mean that's a major hit for them if Intel abandoning that platform.
So this I don't know. One of the things, but I wonder if it isn't related to the Skylake thing. Back when, it's funny, Microsoft can never come out and say this, right? But I've heard this from multiple sources at Microsoft, that Skylake is the buggiest chipset Intel's ever put out. The problems are so deep and so vast that for Microsoft to fix those things for Windows 7 and Windows 8.1, which Intel demanded that Microsoft do, they would have to halt development of Windows 10 just to catch up.
What was the number? It was like a year they would have to halt development just to
to stop development. I don't know.
It was something ridiculous. Yeah,
better part of a year. And Microsoft was not willing to do that, and that's what resulted in the weird truncated support time for Skylake that they've since rescinded. And so when they step back from that cliff, a lot of people are saying to me, "Oh, Microsoft obviously caved." I've not actually talked to anyone about that since it happened. I don't believe that Microsoft caved, just based on the information I got previously, again from multiple sources. I think Intel caved. I think Intel did the work to make it work on Windows 7 and 8.1 and said, okay, so if we fix this through software, will you adhere to the normal support timeframe? And or Microsoft was simply just forced to do so because adhere to the normal support timeframe, that is, because relatively so few customers went to Windows 10 that if there were just a couple 100 million Windows 7 computers in the world a year or two into Windows 10, who cares about Skylake? But because there are so many, I think I did the math this morning. If you still believe there are 1.5 billion Windows PCs in the world, it's something like 733 or somewhere in there, 735 million are running Windows 7 and Windows 8.1. Half.
Wow.
It was actually over half. Let's say half.
A billion was ridiculous. I mean, I thought that number was ridiculous, but it does show that. Listen, I don't think, first of all, 400 million people in a year is not a bad number.
Yeah. Right.
They didn't. It's their most successful, I guess, upgrade of all time.
It's insane compared to any previous version of Windows. Yeah, I know. It's so weird to have to, paint this as a disappointment, but you need to understand that their internal numbers were much higher than that. They expected it to be much bigger.
Yeah, interesting.
But it's still, the very act of getting, like I said, real human beings to upgrade to a new version of Windows, it's something that scares people. It's something they don't think about doing. Convincing them to do it, getting them to do it, tricking them to do it, which they tried. It's still pretty impressive. I think it's impressive. I mean, but yeah, I guess it wasn't as good as they were hoping. Very
cool, Paul. Interesting stuff. Paul, what is going on Thurrott.com?
What do you mean?
What's going on? I hear there's a premium thing happening, and
yeah. Well, so we're rolling out premium features over time. Now that I'm back from France and back from my month of travel, we're going to start pushing more of that stuff out. And so hopefully it won't be the end of the month, but certainly by the middle of September, we should have the premium part of the site up and running. The other thing I want to, and please subscribe, I guess, but there's a link on the top of the site. We've got those graphic boxes there, and there's an article by Brad about the Xbox Elite Daily Controller Daily Giveaway. That's really nicely worded. Let me fix that. We are giving away a $150 Xbox Elite controller every single day. It doesn't cost you a cent. You just have to join our email newsletter, which is free. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand why everyone isn't doing that. So please do that and win a controller. It's every day during the week. So 5 times a week, we're giving away one of these Xbox Elite controllers, which are awesome.
First of all, this is great.
Yeah. They work with Xbox One, of course, but they also work with Windows PCs too.
Very, very cool. So go to Thurrott.com, the Level Up Xbox Elite Daily Controller giveaway. It starts today. That was on the 6th, the 1st.
Yeah, we started at the beginning. Right, so we've been doing it for about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We'll do it until the premium stuff is fully launched. And so our anticipation was it would be at least a month because we thought it'd be the end of the August. It's probably going to be closer to the middle of September at this point. So however long it takes every day until we're done, we'll give away a controller every single day.
Excellent. Guys, if you're watching this live, stay tuned. We're going to be doing our bonus show right now. Following this, the next couple of minutes, we're going to start it. If you're not watching live and you're listening to the podcast, go to our website, gfknetwork.com. You can subscribe to all our shows there. If you want to watch the bonus material, go to patreon.com/whatthetech. Fund us, and you get access to all these bonus materials. People want us to talk about a tweet you did today.
Okay.
About a controller, and I actually...
Could you be less mysterious?
It's about a controller.
It's about a controller.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or whatever you want to talk about. We could talk about
No,
whatever
that's
you want.
good.
Doesn't matter.
I don't know what that means yet, but I'll
All right,
sure.
we'll figure it out. All right, guys, that's it for this week. See y'all later.